Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are moving into our last presentation of the forum. So I will go ahead and kick things back over to Jennifer for introductions.
Okay, y'all, here we go. Last talk of the last session of our 2026 Virtual Members Forum. This talk is titled Clarifying How ArchivesSpace Works, an overview of the Technical Documentation Group. Our speaker today is Corey Schmidt. Corey Schmidt, he, him, is an IT specialist at the Smithsonian Institution and lead of the Technical Documentation subgroup. He received his Bachelor's of Arts in History from Truman State University and his Master's of Science in Information from the University of Michigan. In his free time, he enjoys baking, playing D&D, and performing improv comedy. Take it away.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you all so much for having me here. I hope you all will give me a little bit of grace because I am fighting a cold right now, so I don't feel very well. So I'm speaking a little more softly than I normally would. Please let me know if you're having any sort of audio difficulty, trouble hearing me, and I'll try and adjust my settings. So thank you all so much for giving me that little bit of help. But yes, so today I'd like to talk with all of you about the technical documentation subteam, what it is that we maintain, what it is that we actively do, and how you all can contribute, and then giving a little bit of time at the very end, asking for your feedback about um, uh, what you would like to see improved in the technical documentation. So the Technical Documentation Subteam is a part of the Technical Advisory Council. It was originally formed in 2015 as a means to take an inventory of all the places where technical documentation lived for ArchivesSpace. And then it grew from there to really include a lot of community community feedback and outreach and community awareness. So the main charge for the technical documentation subteam is really to help maintain and enhance ArchivesSpace's technical documentation. And what you see on the screen here are the three main places that we do that. The first is the ArchivesSpace Technical Documentation website. And along with that is the GitHub repository where all the technical documentation lives. The other part is the awesome ArchivesSpace list. This is a list that details community-created plugins, scripts, blogs, and other resources helpful for ArchivesSpace users and developers alike. And then lastly is the API documentation, which is thorough documentation of how to use the API and a list of all the different endpoints available from the latest release. In addition to all of that, the TechDocs team maintains and enhances, oh, I'm sorry, I already said that, maintains and enhances documentation. We also solicit feedback and offer assistance to the community through the ArchivesSpace listservs, as well as more informal places such as the archivist working with archival data Slack space. So you may have seen some of our committee members responding to people on the listserv or doing outreach in those other areas. And lastly, the team looks to perform outreach to the community and other teams on the Technical Advisory Council and Users Advisory Council and participating in forums such as this. So a little bit more about, again, what we maintain. So again, we maintain the ArchivesSpace Technical Documentation website, which I'm going to briefly just go over in case we have any people here who have never seen the website, or maybe you have seen it, but we've started to include some new pages and new features, which we are very excited to share with you, and also talk a little bit about the ArchivesSpace Awesome List as well as the API documentation. So let me go ahead and see if I can do that. Okay. Hopefully you can see the TechDocs website. And let me know if I need to make it a little bigger for everybody here to see, but
Corey, if you can make it a little bit bigger, that would help.
a little bigger. Okay. I just
Thank
can't
you.
get very louder. That's the only thing I can't do. So this is the TechDocs website. You can get to it by going to docs.archivespace.org. This is basically a refurbished, redone technical documentation website. For those of you who are around 2021, 2022, the original website was built using Jekyll, but in 2025 we moved to using Astro and Starlight. So because of that, we were able to include a lot of features that people were asking for, and uh, as it relates to this website in particular. And a big shout out to Brian Zellup on the ArchivesSpace development team for really leading that charge. He's been instrumental in making this website as good as it is. Um, Over on the left-hand corner of the screen, you could see a table of contents, and in that table of contents, you can see a lot of the documentation where it lives, including getting started. So how do you get started using ArchivesSpace? How to download it, all the different requirements, information about Solr and that kind of thing. And then over in the architecture part, architecture deals with how ArchivesSpace is structured, and giving a framework for how the application works as a whole. So if you wanted to read more about the foundational decisions about, why, the JSON model for different record types, or maybe you want to read more about the back end or the staff interface, all of these different pages are places where you could dive a bit more deeper into how all that works. The next two, administration and provisioning over here, those deal with helping to set up an ArchivesSpace instance, giving information on how to deploy it, make backups, and providing guidance on other application customizations. So if you're looking to, for instance, learn more about running with Docker, I know Thimios gave a fantastic presentation earlier this morning. About how to set up Docker and use it. You can find more information about how to do that here, and including specific features like resetting passwords, provisioning, that's a little bit more on the server side of things, but doing things like load balancing, serving over HTTPS, using MySQL, robots.txt, all that kind of stuff. And I know external Solr, that was a big change in 3.1. So you can read more about all of that in those sections. And then if I go here to migrations, that just details more information if you are migrating from a pre-existing archival management system like Archivist Toolkit or Archon, in addition to a bunch of links on the migration tools page to, again, more guides on Archivist Toolkit, Archon, but also, very importantly, the data import and export maps. That's been a really useful tool, especially for people coming from, maybe raw EAD files or another kind of format. Customization deals with how you can customize the application, including advice on building and deploying plugins, and modifying the config.rb file to enable or modify existing system-wide settings. So this is again really important because we've had previous conversations in this virtual member forum talking about bringing more of these configuration options available to the staff user interface. So if you want to get ahead of the curve and you want to read more about the configuration file and what kind of stuff you can change there, you can come to this page. I will give a little bit of a caveat to say that we are actively updating this page. It's a little outdated, but we're actively working to get all this stuff ready to go for in anticipation of those configuration changes. And of course, if you're developing, plugins, this is also a really, really useful page. I've consulted this page many a times when I was building plugins. So a lot of great stuff there. And then development, this is highlighting many useful tools and guides to help developers of the application, including things with, Docker configurations, using UI tests, and tips on using VS Code Editor, for example. So if you're looking to do some, in-depth development work, I highly recommend checking out some of these pages because they can be really useful. And you can see some other pages as well. We have a guide on how to use the API. So I think there was a presentation before that talked a little bit about this. So you can read more about how to use it here. What's not listed here, but is linked via this API reference is where the API documentation formally lives. So this, if you want, the most complete and accurate, up-to-date information about the API documentation, this is where you would go. It's archivespace.github.io/archivespace/API. So this is where you're going to find a list to all of the different API endpoints. And if you're curious, if you go over to the top left-hand corner of the screen and you click on Routes by URI, that's where you're going to get that list of all of the different endpoints that you can use. So if, for instance, you wanted to create a corporate entity agent using the API, you could do that, and you just need to click on this route, and it would take you to documentation about what is expected in making this request via the API, right? It gives description, permissions, and in some cases, I'm sorry, all cases, there should be an auto-generated curl example, as you see over in the right-hand corner of the screen. And in some cases, there will be a Python example. I don't think there is one for this one. Yeah, there isn't. So but there are some endpoints that have Python examples as well. But there are quite a few quite a few endpoints, so it is a lot to build all of that stuff for. So going back to the website and release notes, I think that's yes, that's the brand new section that we just added. So big shout out to Alex. Um, Alex Dury at Harvard. He was the one who helped us develop a template for making some notes about what people can expect to see from different versions of ArchivesSpace. So this is brand new. So we started with 4.0 to just give a brief overview about what kind of things people should expect. So this is just a new part of the TechDocs website. So again, it compiles a lot of the stuff that you would see from the release notes on GitHub and from community communication from the ArchivesSpace team, but it tries to simplify a lot of that so that it's a little bit easier to digest, and it gives you a better jumping off point to see, okay, these are the things that I need to look out for if I'm, upgrading to 4.0, for instance, from a previous version. The last other parts I'll briefly touch on are the About TechDocs page from here. This is where I kind of get on my soapbox and say we would love everyone here to contribute to technical documentation. This is it's not just us on the TechDocs subteam, but it's all of you that help us make sure that the technical documentation is as good as it can be and is matching your needs. So if you are thinking about, contributing, whether you're going through this website and you see a place where, maybe there's a small inaccuracy, or you see that there's a section that says, more documentation needed, and you are a person to say, oh yeah, I actually know exactly how this particular part of ArchivesSpace works, and I want to contribute. This authoring content page gives you a guide on how we style all of this documentation so that it's consistent across all the different pages that you saw. So again, a lot of good examples here. And at the bottom of every page, so let me scroll down. Here we go. At the bottom of every page on the TechDocs website, you'll see two links. One is this one here. It's edit this page on GitHub. If I open that to a new tab, and let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that a bit better. Essentially, what it does is all of this documentation, it actually lives on GitHub, but because of the way the TechDocs website is structured, um, the data from the GitHub repository and it generates the website from that content. So what you're seeing here is the markdown file that contains all of the content that you were just seeing on this authoring content page. So all of this information is exactly as it is on the website. It's just in a uh, markdown file. So if, for instance, I realized, oh, looking at this tech docs, it actually needs to be one word instead of two. I could just quickly edit that with using GitHub's web um, web editor. And then when I want to contribute that change, I just go up here to the top right-hand corner of the screen. I click commit changes, and I'm not actually going to do it, but I would essentially say, hey, I changed this page to make this slight correction. I could propose that change, and then that would alert us on the TechDocs team to say, hey, someone's updated that page. We would review your change, and then we could either accept that change, we could ask you some follow-up questions through GitHub, or if we have a good reason to, we might reject the change. But on the most part, we accept any changes proposed. So if you're familiar with GitHub and Markdown, this hopefully makes a little bit of sense. But if you are not familiar with GitHub and making changes to Markdown files, we will be working on some video tutorials for explaining everything from what the heck does a commit change mean to if you're curious about pull requests or creating an issue or something like that, working with Markdown. We hope to create some video tutorials on how to do that. Another place that you can learn more about how to contribute is if I go to, let me go. Oh, that's not it. That's the one I want. Yeah, so this is the TechDocs GitHub repository, and if I scroll down on the README, down. Here we go. This contributing section, it also details how you can contribute back to the technical documentation website. Talking about everything like pull requests, test suites. We do some linting using Prettier, for instance. So yeah, a lot of great information about how to contribute. Another way for you to contribute to technical documentation is to report an issue on Jira. So if you're looking at the bottom of the screen, you can see this report an issue. If I open that, again in a new tab, this will take us to the TechDocs Jira board. So for any of you who are familiar with ArchivesSpace's own development board, where you can contribute feature requests or you could report on bugs. This is the exact, basically, this is the exact same thing, except specifically for technical documentation. So if found an issue on any of the technical documentation pages, or maybe you want to suggest a new feature be added to the website, or an additional page or something like that, you can come here. And then if you go to the bottom, you see this little create button, the plus. You can add a title to whatever issue it is that you want to create. And I could say, create more documentation, go over on the right and click create. And then from there, you can see here it says created TD74. I can view that issue, and from viewing this issue, I can add description. So I can say, well, what kind of documentation do I want to make? I can add more information here. And then from there, us on the TechDocs sub-team, we would review it, we would prioritize it and assign it to whoever we would assign it to somebody on our team, and then we would get to work implementing whatever the change is. So I'd recommend going this route if you're not as comfortable working within GitHub or maybe Markdown files. If you just simply want to report an issue, this is one of the ways to do that. Gotcha. And as far as other places to contribute, let me go ahead and go back to my slides. Yeah, so I talked a little bit about editing this page on GitHub and reporting an issue on our Jira board. Oh, I didn't point out really. Actually, let me exit out of this. I want to point out where'd it go? I had it up somewhere. Here it is. So we also are helping to maintain the awesome ArchivesSpace list. And again, I talked a little bit about this previously, but it's basically one big README file where you can contribute if you've created a plugin or you've maybe written a blog post or given a presentation about, working with ArchivesSpace and you think it'd be useful for the community, then this is a great place to contribute that kind of information. So you can, in order to contribute to the awesome ArchivesSpace list, you would basically want to submit a change to this README file. It's also a Markdown file, and you'd have to go through the process of doing that through GitHub. But if again, if you're a little bit more uncomfortable doing that route, you can always go to this Issues tab, and you can click on Create a New Issue up here, and then you can write what it is you'd like to add to the awesome ArchivesSpace list. But generally, people will, you can edit this straight in GitHub by clicking this edit file. And then from there, you would essentially commit your changes, and it's the exact same process that we were talking about before, just with the TechDocs website. So, okay. And let me go back to the slides here. The last thing I will quickly plug is the last way that you can help contribute to technical documentation is to consider joining the Technical Advisory Council. The nominations for volunteers they usually start in around April or May, so I'll defer to the ArchivesSpace team for when that's going to happen more precisely. But if you are as excited as I am about doing technical documentation and writing it down, you can submit your nomination, and you could say on your nomination, I really, 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 really want to do technical documentation. And then the people evaluating those nominations can say, yep, that we should put that person on TechDocs. I think that's actually what I did in my in my application. So that is another way for you to contribute. And yeah, so that is a little bit of an overview of the TechDocs team, the TechDocs website, as well as all the various places that we help maintain. So I'm going to now give my very sore throat a little bit of a rest and open it up to discussion. So if you have any questions for us on the TechDocs team, please enter them in the Q&A, or if you're looking at any of these questions, we'd love to get specific feedback from you all from these questions in particular. So if you're looking at a question and you're like, I have an answer to that, please feel free to chat or do whatever to give us that feedback.
Thank you, Corey. I'm going to cut you off so you stop talking and get something to drink. Yeah, if anyone has a question or wants to respond to anything that Corey has put in the chat, please feel free. We do already have one question in the Q&A, but before we get to that, thank you, Corey, for playing hurt and doing this presentation while you're sick. At least your fire alarm didn't go off. So it's still not the worst thing that's happened during an ArchivesSpace presentation that you've given.
I am very surprised you still remember and that
Are
fills
you
me with so much
kidding?
joy. That fills me with so much joy. You remember that?
How would I forget? That was like the only time that that particular thing has happened in a virtual member forum. So, yeah, this is, I mean, it stinks that you're sick, but it could be worse. But you do have a question in the Q&A, and you are the perfect person to answer this. Is there a way to suggest as a PR something fixes to the API documentation site? I've seen some things that are incomplete or confusing that I think can be fixed / improved. This is the big one with all the API endpoints. Or should I just create an issue on the TechDocs Jira?
Yeah, I would say if you are comfortable with submitting a pull request, um, so with the API documentation, that pull request is going to be to um, the ArchivesSpace GitHub repository. Um, so not the TechDocs GitHub repository and not the awesome ArchivesSpace GitHub repository, but the core code to ArchivesSpace. Um, Michael, if you are uh, comfortable with submitting a pull request um, that fixes the that fixes that API documentation, I would say, yeah, absolutely go for it. Um, if not, um, more more than welcome to submit that on the TechDocs website, or sorry, TechDocs Jira board. Yeah, yeah, what repo is in. So the API documentation is automatically generated, and this is where I'm. If Brian or Thimios is here, they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of that documentation is automatically generated when a new release of ArchiveSpace is created. So if you, uh, for instance, I've in the past contributed Python examples, written it in controller. I think the different controller files. Um, but I'll submit my PR, it'll go in, but I won't actually see it appear on the API website until that new release goes through. So yeah, absolutely. If you want to send a PR, yeah, just go through the archive space repo. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Thanks, Corey. Um, if anyone has any other questions, please do drop them in. We'll give it a minute. I don't want to speak too quickly because the next thing I'm going to do is wrap up the forum and tell everyone thank you. So I want to make sure if anyone has any questions, they get an opportunity to answer them. But I also don't want to make everyone stay here longer than they have to.